Welcome back to Respect the Process. I am Kelly Hunter alongside Chris Stewart, and I'm not good at math. We were told we would not have to do a lot of math, but I do.
No math, and there would be snacks.
We got that.
Yes.
But we are approaching the third Saturday in October, in case you had not heard. And if that doesn't mean something to you, then we're not properly dialed in.
Yeah, definitely the case. I mean, it's cool outside for the first time, and it's got the feel. I can't wait to make the drive up on Thursday and see everything changing as you go through that beautiful stretch of northeast Alabama and the southeast portion of Tennessee, a little bit of Georgia that you make on that drive. It is gorgeous, especially when the colors start to change, and it's great until you get inside Neyland Stadium, and then
there's a lot of change. Speaking of change, that's a good segue. Speaking of change, because we need to kind of do a state of the state, kind of thing, and I don't know how to beat around the bush here on this, but Alabama doesn't look dangerous right now.
I would disagree.
Okay.
Because I think there's enough on tape to say that's a dangerous team.
I think
what I don't think you are is I don't think we are lethal and unbeatable, which is what we have been many times in the last 17 years.
I think 15-1 was Coach Saban's record up there.
Yeah,
I think
exactly right.
I think, and the reason I was led to that is because I think a lot of us were looking for the emphatic win on Saturday against South Carolina, to the bounce back after we took one on the chin against Vanderbilt. We're going to make this personal, and we're going to go out and really take South Carolina to the woodshed.
Right. I get that. Here's the problem. We found out two things. Number one, South Carolina's not bad. Mm-hmm. We found out Vandy is even better than we gave them credit for. It's one thing to beat Alabama, great win for them, and it's not like we're going, oh gosh, we're happy now that we stayed on the field with Vandy because they turned around and beat Kentucky. That's not my point. The fact that Vanderbilt could win a game the magnitude of the one that they did against Alabama, and then turn around and win a 50-50 game at best for them in Lexington, that to me was as big a statement. What's the thing where you validate it, you validate a win, something like that? They did for their perspective. My point in this with Alabama is that they got to get better.
Yeah.
But they're not. I think looking 30,000 feet, there may not be a dominant team this year anywhere.
Yeah.
We're going to know more after the Texas-Georgia game.
Yeah.
If Texas dismantles Georgia the way they have done some other recent opponents, including Oklahoma, we may have to go, okay, we're all chasing them.
Yeah.
And here we go. Or it could be that they're the next team that gets just knocked off the mantle. Georgia, we saw against Alabama, and even at times last week against Mississippi State, ain't the same Georgia that they've been.
No, but I think a lot of fans want to see that first half Alabama team that they saw against Georgia.
And to be clear, I'm not pointing to all these other things to deflect Alabama in their issues. My point is simply that this may be what college football looks right now. With all the change and all of these guys that Alabama had as backups in the past that we knew could start a lot of other places, well, guess what? They're starting a lot of other places right now. And even at a place like Vandy, South Carolina, they got 22 that can play. Those edge rushers that they had the other day, be nice to have. You know, anybody would love to have them and the effectiveness that they have. I just don't, you can't just show up. And this goes back to your point and part of the problem that's got to be cleaned up and needs to be cleaned up and should be cleaned up. And I do think will be cleaned up by Alabama. But the reality is you can't just show up in your uniform with the crimson and the crimson helmet and think it's a
doesn't-
given.
no, it
that
doesn't
you're gonna
blind
win.
anybody, no.
It doesn't anymore. So that's part of the problem. You got to make sure you're ready. You got to be sound. You've got guys that are brand new to Alabama, and you've also got veterans that have been around but are trying to learn something new. And they're not playing with the same abandon that we've seen. I'll tell you one thing I did see in the South Carolina game that I loved.
Okay.
I don't know if it came from the head coach. I don't know if it was Kane Womack as defensive coordinator and a former head coach himself. But it was clear on that last drive, win or lose, we're going to do it in the face of the quarterback. We're going to do everything we can to get in the quarterback's face. We're not going to play back and be,
In the
for lack
prevent.
of a better term, defensive.
Yeah.
We're going to be on the attack.
Right.
And it created problems. Thank goodness that Malachi Moore had the presence to tell Damani Jackson, don't you dare take a knee, or that would have been a safety. It could have been called a safety. Probably upon review would have been ruled a safety. And we're going to overtime in that game, and God knows what it would have looked like.
Yeah.
Because we're on our heels.
Well,
at
and
that
that's,
point.
another thing. It's finding a way to win is great, but I don't know that finding a way to win is going to win a championship.
I would not disagree with that whatsoever.
Because the past two games, now with Vanderbilt excluded, but South Carolina, we found a way to win. We pulled it out. It's like we need to be on the aggressive, and not because in both the past two games, they've had to stand on the sidelines and watch the other team with the ball.
Yeah, I agree. The other part that I will simply go, okay, let's tap the brakes just a little bit. Which team was better at this point in Bama fans' minds? This one or the one 12 months ago? You didn't know for sure who your quarterback was 12 months ago. If you had a quarterback that could win, you had a lot of question marks everywhere except place kicker. Mm-hmm. A lot of question marks. And I mean from the standpoint of who we have been at Alabama and what we have been, and a lot of the conversation out of that Texas game, and certainly come out of a narrow win down in Tampa against South Florida, was, man, it's been a historic run, but Nick Saban's clearly lost it. Mm-hmm. He just doesn't have it anymore.
Yeah.
It's going to be a 3, maybe a 4-loss season, and golly, sure has been fun. But Bama's done being Bama, and that Bama team was a minute away from playing for a national championship and playing against the guy that's coaching them now, because he had a team in the national championship game. Yeah. So they're in a very similar boat, I think, yet in a much better position to get it fixed than they were 12 months ago. No guarantee with that they're going to wind up in the semifinals this season. But I do think overall the team has a chance to be better quicker than last year's team did at this very same time.
Yeah, just we'll go down a couple things that jump out that we want to see corrected maybe this week. There's
a long list.
It's not
it's
good.
It's
okay. No, it's good. It's good. Defense not getting off the field in 3 downs. Mm-hmm. Because the example is South Carolina opening the third quarter, and that drive that took 8 minutes and 40 seconds off the clock. I mean, it was, and
a lot like Vandy at times.
I looked it up. So it was 16 plays. The last time Alabama had a 16-play drive was it goes back to between 2014 and 2023. They only had 1. Whew. But not being able to get them off the field.
Yeah, which was an issue the previous week against Vanderbilt. And you're playing a team, obviously, that's a lot more explosive in Tennessee than either one of those squads.
And that also
it's got to get cleaned up.
And it goes to the middle 8 that he has talked about.
Got obliterate. That was a Bermuda Triangle type of 8 minutes.
Yeah.
It was awful, weird stuff happening. And look, Coach DeBoer calls timeout before the onside kick to try to make sure everybody's in position.
Yeah.
it comes down to you got to make a play. That being said, real easy for me to say when I'm not trying to catch that oblong thing spinning, like a top coming at me. That's an unusual. I don't know how you replicate that in practice. That's a tough one.
Yeah.
The drop kick, spin sideways, all that stuff. Kid made a great kick. Bama didn't field it. It led to almost disaster at the end of that ball game. But I thought the management in terms of, there's only so much you can do. You can rep them. You can remind them. You can call timeout and warn them and remind them again. But guys still have to come down to the execution and making the plays themselves, whatever the situation, whatever the circumstances. And you've also got the responsibility as a coach after a while figuring out, they may not be able to pick this up, so how am I going to get them in the best position? This happened a year ago. Alabama's offense, coordinator's trying to run what he wants to run, which is fine. I get that. You're hired to teach, but also to run a certain type of offense. Tommy Rees was doing that. But after about a month into that season or less, they realized, we're going to have to adapt. I may want to run a certain thing the certain way, but my best chance to win at quarterback is not equipped to run it the way I want to run it. So I better run some stuff for him. I better call some stuff for him that's going to give him a better chance to succeed. They did that as the season went on, and obviously Jalen got better as well. But defensively, I think there comes a point in the time is probably now that you go, okay, we're teaching, we're learning, we're getting better, but we also need to scale back. There were times that Nick Saban's teams did that, whether it's Kirby Smart, his defensive coordinator, whoever it happened to be, where you could see they were almost pushing too many buttons. The guys are looking over to the sideline to get the call, and the ball's being snapped.
Right.
And we're getting beat on plays because we're trying to play chess.
Yeah.
Just play checkers.
Too busy trying to get the perfect alignment in. Yep.
Yes, go play. And I think we are getting close to maybe being in that spot for Alabama. Again, that ain't my call. That's the coach's responsibility. But I think they're learning what these guys can learn, can adjust to. And while, yes, it's the player's responsibility to make plays, it's the coach's responsibility to put him in the best position to have the best chance to succeed. And I think they're understanding that a little bit better as well.
Well, and there's a good amount at stake this coming Saturday.
Heck yeah, there is.
I mean, first of all, for Coach DeBoer, a win against Tennessee means something.
Sure it does.
It's not just a win against South Carolina. This is Tennessee, and it really does mean something.
And I'll tell you this real quick. He's been told, he's heard about it. He may have even seen it from a distance. There's no way he can understand it until after that game is over with on Saturday. Win or lose, he will have a better understanding, and he will be better prepared to coach that game next year than he is today. That's not his fault. That's anybody's position. Yeah. Nick Saban didn't know until he went through it. He won it every time, and it took him still only the 1 year, but he had to experience it to understand why it meant as much as it did to so many people. He never questioned it again. He never questioned it, I don't think, out loud going into that first meeting, but it only took one time for him to get it. That's all it's going to take for Kalen DeBoer, but it does take that first time.
Well, you have that, and then coupled with this is a potential SEC championship elimination game.
Doubt.
2 losses because both teams are coming off a loss to an unranked opponent, a conference unranked opponent, and then also looking to the playoff picture, it makes your margin of error
0.
much smaller.
I think it's 0, just because Arkansas being the loss for Tennessee, right?
Yep.
And Vanderbilt the loss for Alabama. I think at the end of the year, where those two teams are going to be, it's going to make it a very tough argument. I'm not saying you can't get there with 3 losses. I'm saying I don't want to find out. And I'm also saying that if you lose to 3 top 10, top 15 teams, maybe you still find your way in. If there's not a perfect team and there's a bunch of 2 and 3 loss squads, maybe that plays out for you. But I'm not afraid to say that if Alabama, and look, I know there's work to be done after, and if you lose, the season ain't over with. But I feel very strongly, that if Alabama wins that football game on Saturday, they're going to be in the playoff. I don't know that they're going to get to Atlanta, but I think if Alabama beats Tennessee, they're going to be in the college football playoff. I just think that will be a game that will completely flip the switch for them, and there'll be a lot of momentum going forward if they're able to get that done.
Well, and that has been a phrase that's been tossed around, flipping the switch. And not only the switch on just the outlook, but the entire season. Because one thing Alabama has done up to this point, they've played up and down to the level of competition.
Agreed.
They have played up to the level of Georgia. They have played down at times to the level of other teams. So you look at even early on in the season. Excuse me. And one of the things.
Keep talking.
Okay. Oh.
This great thing about this set.
See, I like it. Yeah, I like when the waiter comes around. But one of the things that you see from mature and experienced teams is they do not play up and down to the level of competition. They dictate the tempo, the pace, and the atmosphere of a game. And I think that's
totally
one
agree.
thing. I think that is a potential outcome from this game.
I don't think there's any doubt. Even the Georgia game, Bama played up to the standard of Georgia, and then down to the level of a Georgia team that could be down 30-7 at halftime. I mean, they fell behind in that game, but still had enough to get it done. You're right. And when we say flip the switch, it really does apply. Because how many times have you're in a dark room, you know the light switch is there, you're reaching for it, you're trying to find it, you know it's there, but it finally comes on. We know the talent's there. There's a lot of changes. I think it was 39 new players on the roster from last year.
Even allowing 19 unanswered points this past Saturday. Mm-hmm. Alabama gets up early. And then, as we said, as it creeps towards the second quarter and then towards halftime, it's like we're kind of losing a grip on this thing here. And it takes until the fourth quarter for them to finally regain it. And I'm not even going to say put it away. It took a very heads-up play as time was expiring for Alabama to secure that win.
Hang on for dear life and get it done. Look, it's going to be a grind the rest of the way, an absolute grind. But I do think they're good enough. We've seen enough good from this team. We know what the talent level is. Can you put all of it together to be the type of team that, just about everybody's great when they're at their best, but can you minimize how bad your worst looks?
Right.
That may be how we get to the finish line with a champion this year in college football, and it's certainly no different for Alabama. They've got good enough pieces and enough of them to win the whole thing, but they've also got to stop to a degree the hemorrhaging of mistakes that could get them out of the playoff before we really get to November.
Well, and I think a key component going into the game this weekend is defensive coordinator Kane Womack dialing up that defense so that in the past 2 games, Tennessee has been slow to start in that they have not scored in the first half. If you can keep them, minimize them, obviously in the first half, and then figure out second half adjustments to continue that, and this sounds very elemental, but that would seemingly be.
You're right, but the other side's trying to make changes too. The other side's
absolutely
good, and look, that doesn't change how we feel as fans when it ain't going our team's way, but that's the truth. I mean, did you really think Georgia? Well, let me back up. Georgia had to roll the dice all chips went in on that first drive of the third quarter.
Mm-hmm.
They went for it and converted 3 times on fourth down, including twice inside their own 35, 40-yard line, I think it was, even on the second fourth down conversion. So they were like, we're either going to lose by 100 or we're going to try to win this thing.
Yeah.
And they almost won it. They didn't lose by 100, but they did lose thanks to Alabama making great plays down the stretch. And when you are playing a team like Tennessee, if you fall behind early, they are explosive enough, they are dangerous enough to run you out of the building. But Alabama's explosive enough and dangerous enough, as we saw against Georgia, they can do the same. You got to understand that because both teams are so good on offense, you can't let up, and you also better not waste your opportunities on offense, because it may be that whoever gets one stop the entire night, and I mean one legitimate big situation stop, is the one that wins that football game. Usually you say we can't, in the old days where, 17-14 was going to win you a game like this, somebody's got to step up and make a play on offense, whatever. Well, I think there's going to be plays on offense for both sides, but somebody's got to do it a couple of times on defense, and that may be enough.
Well, last time Alabama was there, they took the sticks down. But what we talk about, what we have said, and you're one of the few people that was there because this coaching staff largely was not there.
Yep.
As we've talked about, most of these players were not there.
Right.
Some were, a few, but I mean, by and large, that's the minority of this team that has been up there and experienced that. I think Vanderbilt was different, but when you have a team take the field, when they take it down, that's humiliating.
Vanderbilt had to get directions to the field from the ushers. But
as I said, they did it very orderly. They probably had like a box that they put the screws in, labeled which one it was.
They had engineers there helping them reassemble and where's it going to float in the river.
But the slight on your team when you have not been there to experience it is a little different.
It is. And look, this to me is the truly most dangerous Tennessee team that
we've seen in a while.
That we've seen in maybe 15 plus years. Yeah. They had a stat. I was on ESPN, I think, last night, running across the crawl that says something like Tennessee is 9 of their last 10 against Alabama when they're ranked in the top 15. How far back does that actually go?
Yeah.
I mean, because how many times has Tennessee in the last 25 years, 30 years actually been in the top 15 when they've played Alabama? They've had a few. They were good in the 90s, but in the 2000s, in mid-2000s and since, they've been average more often than they've been really good or great.
Yeah.
So I don't know how.
Nothing against Nick Saban. He did a hell of a job coaching while he had those teams up there. But
He did. But I think that's part of the reason Tennessee was that, and karma, I think, were big reasons why Tennessee dropped. But they're not anymore. They're really good. They're as talented, as dangerous as practically anybody in the country, and that's why this will take a great effort to beat them on Saturday.
Quarterback, can you just roll off the tongue?
No.
I'm Olivia is what I'm going to call him.
I wanted to call him DJ Ungalale at least twice.
I'm Olivia.
Or Tua 2.0 or something like that. But, yeah, he's good.
Practice that one.
Yeah. We'll have it ready by kickoff. Yep. But the Tennessee quarterback is what I'll refer to him as most of the time beforehand.
Well, you've got a 2:30 kickoff this Saturday. You said you're headed up on Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll take the air 11:30?
Correct. For a 2:30 kick, we do go on the air at 11:30 Central Time, and looking forward to it. I said it at the beginning. It's
a great
the drive
game.
Through Alabama and that part of the state of Alabama on the way to Knoxville. As much as I kid about Tennessee, it'll be beautiful until we start to see their fan base and that color.
So the orange gets overwhelming and
yes, And then the first 100 times you hear Rocky Top, it's a cool little song.
Oh, yeah.
And then it gets tough. So hopefully we'll have fun.
When the guy in the overalls comes out clogging, it's like I've had about enough. That's not all we
Trying
can
to be
handle.
nice.
I know.
Trying to be nice.
Does Coach DeBoer wear the same hat
I don't
and
know.
the same T-shirt? I was just curious. I didn't know.
Under the pullover?
I didn't know if he has.
no idea.
I didn't know if that was a lucky. Like if he's like,
I have no idea. I just know it's an outfit that practically any Bama fan would love to have. You know, when
that's
you look
going
around,
to work.
You look around, but that's how you dress for your job, and that's kind of the way they dress. You know, a lot of people wanted Dan Lanning as the head coach at Alabama. He made some great decisions in their win for Oregon over Ohio State, but he had on a long sleeve T-shirt too.
Saturday night was a great night of football to be able to watch. It just went from great game to great game. Oh,
yeah, I agree. But I said what I said about the attire in jest.
I know.
Because
I know.
People start nitpicking those things when you don't get the results that you want. They start using other things for their excuse other than saying, we need to play better.
The shirts aren't all tucked in.
The shirt doesn't matter. The shirt doesn't matter. The blue pen doesn't matter. Play better. I don't care if he's wearing a tux or flip-flops and swimsuit.
I've always thought it was interesting that baseball is the only sport that the manager/coach wears the same uniform. Like, what if the other sports, the manager and coach
It
wore?
could be a really old dude. I mean, come on. I love Don Zimmer, but Don Zimmer in a
watching Bobby
Little League
Cox with his bad
baseball.
knees toddle out there every time there had to be a pitching change. I mean,
get it.
And I just, yeah.
I get it.
It'd make the game more interesting at least, but unless
fashion styles change.
I know.
Over time.
I know.
This jacket will look hideous in 20 years.
No, that is a great looking jacket.
Thank you.
Good looking pocket square.
It looks pretty good now, but in 20 years, we're
jacket.
looking back, they'll go, what was he thinking? There's a couple of you going right now, what's he thinking?
Herb
I'm
Tarlick.
thinking I like this jacket. The plaid matches.
Great.
He would have. Legend.
Do you know what no one gets credit for in that? Whoever the songwriter was does not get credit for rhyming WKRP and Cincinnati. Like, imagine being handed that as being tasked of, hey, we need a jingle for this. Can you write it for the WKRP show in Cincinnati? Sorry, that's a tangent.
That's a classic, though. It's part of why I love this podcast, because you and I can go down. You and I can go down some paths.
I can go down a rabbit hole quicker than yes.
But WKRP, God is my witness. I thought turkeys could fly. May be the greatest line ever uttered on television.
So good. Okay, well, we've got you coming up. We can always find you at chrisstewart.online.
Yes, ma'am.
As well as on the Crimson Tide Sports Radio Network. Did I get it right?
Crimson Tide Sports Network.
Sports Network.
The radio coverage starts at 11:30 Central on the banks of the Tennessee River and high atop Neyland Stadium, and then kickoff at 2:30 Central.
2:30. Looking forward to it. But we need to thank Scott Forrester for always going up back there and making lemonade or chicken salad or whatever we're able to give him, and for Tim Melton, and of course everybody here at Disrupt Media. And you can always find everything that you need on Next Round Live, as well as Cover Crimson. I'm Kelly Hunter, and for Chris Stewart, give us a good one.
Roll Tide.
We'll see y'all next week. Take care.